Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, we're now starting with Save Our Oceans by Saving Our Canals First. We have the Executive Director at Terracycle Thai Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Mr. James Scott.
Okay, we can hear everybody. My slides are up. Awesome. Welcome everybody, and welcome everybody online. My name's James. I'm the Executive Director for Terracycle Foundation. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how the waste ends up in the canals, what we're currently doing about it, and what we're going to be doing in the future. So one of the biggest things is getting people to understand why the waste is there. So in this slide, for example, it says 80% of everything you see here is going to end up in those canals. This doesn't just apply to these products. It's also when you look around your home. As you guys see later, it isn't just bottles and bags that we're collecting. We collect mattresses, fridges, stoves, helmets, car parts, tires, you name it. And really it's a shame that all these things are ending up in there, and it creates quite a challenge for cleaning up. So, and the problem is, as I said, when all those things end up there, it's not just the waste problem, but it also has an issue with flooding. So clogging the canals, preventing the canals from managing the floodwaters properly. All these problems are combined together. So we're working with other partners as well to try and solve this. So what is the current situation in Thailand? So as you guys can see, anybody who's been to the canals recently, you'll see that the waste is quite extreme. The water goes from a dark brown to a black. And every day we're pulling out tons of waste out of the canals with no end in sight. And pretty much, for example, in Thailand, almost about half of the mismanaged waste is ending up into the canals. And from there, half of that is getting stuck in the canal. The rest is entering out into the oceans. So obviously this is a big issue. And part of the reasons is local infrastructure is not equipped to manage it. It's partly behaviors of people living on and around waterways, how they're managing their waste. And another factor is it's just simply how the culture is here. So Thais are producing 2.5 times the global average of plastic waste. So it's starting right from our consuming behaviors and then carrying on down the chain of how we manage our waste and how we recycle it. And this is what's creating the problem. I don't want to double click. Anyways, so why do we choose the canals, right? When most people are focusing on rivers and oceans, and we certainly need to work on those areas. The reason we chose the canals is we wanted to work on the waste further upstream. And the idea was that is you need to capture the waste further or earlier in the process, because it's not just the plastics that are the problem, but it's also all the chemicals, the food waste, the detergents, everything that comes along in those packaging. By the time we collect a bottle out of the ocean, for example, it's already done a lot of the environmental damage that it was going to do. Whatever was contained within that bottle has long since been washed into the environment and absorbed into the environment. The other factor is that plastic is now much less likely to be recycled. So in the weeks, months, or even longer period that it took to go from its original source out into the ocean, that plastic's become degraded. So it's gotten into smaller pieces, which are very difficult to identify, and it will most likely not be recycled. So most of that ocean waste just ends up going to landfill. So by moving further up the chain, the chance of recycling a higher percentage increases. The other factor is you're closer to where the waste is coming from. So when you're doing prevention programs and education programs, you're much closer to the people that are actually producing the waste. It's a lot easier to draw correlations and to talk to them about their behaviors because you can see the direct connection. Whereas if I collect waste off of an island somewhere and try and talk to somebody in Bangkok about their waste management issues, it's very hard for them to connect their waste to the waste that we're collecting out there. Whereas when we're in the canals, we can connect it very directly, show them all these different items, and sometimes even be able to track where they're coming from specifically. So the other factor is that it's microplastics as well. As those plastics are traveling down into the ocean, they're getting broken up into smaller and smaller pieces. So even if you can't really see them, they're not as big pieces, they're still there, and they're starting to enter our food chain. So this is another big reason why we want to capture things much, much earlier in the process. So, and me myself, I've seen when we're traveling around Thailand looking at different areas, I've seen polluted canals and rivers, and they're black and they're full of waste, and they're passing right out into an area that's full of seafood farms, fish farms, shrimp farms. So that's got to have an impact on what we're doing. So we definitely need to kind of address that. So now the other factor is sort of like there's a lot of talk about informal pickers and how we're managing this. And my belief is that this pay per collection, this is not going to solve it. The idea that these people are going to do really well by picking up all their waste, this is a fantasy. And for a few reasons is that one is it's a really crappy job for them. The average salary of a waste picker is below minimum wage. So thinking that these people are going to solve our problems is a ridiculous idea. The other factor is that they're often untrained. They don't know how to sort different things properly. They often don't get proper equipment or safety gear, and they're working in a very dangerous environment. So this is also something we think this isn't how we're going to solve this problem. We need to be much more proactive in the area. And the reality is also the informal pickers don't collect as much, right, as somebody that's more trained and organized. And there's a lot of other factors. The other thing is this is the type of collection that's based on being paid per piece of plastic. Now, most plastic doesn't have very much value, so that's a problem. That's great if we're going to talk about PET, but this is less than 5% of the waste that's in the environment. So, when we try and claim a success because we've recycled a bunch of PET bottles, it's a very, very shallow win. And it's certainly not addressing the bigger problem of plastic waste in the environment. So who are we and why am I here today? So Terracycle Foundation is a nonprofit offering here. We've been here since 2020, but Terracycle has been in the recycling the unrecyclable for 20 years in 20 different countries. We do things like recycling for the Olympics. So we did the Olympics in Japan. We'll be doing them in France. We are as I said, we're in 20 different countries. We're the world's largest recycler of cigarette butts. We recycle bubble gum. We recycle diapers, all kinds of crazy items, and we find ways to make that work. We also created the world's first shampoo bottle made from ocean waste. So trying to find ways to bring this recycled matter back into the supply chain and create demand for it to increase the value. We also have brands like Loop, which does reusables, so trying to prevent the plastic in the first place. But even with all this, there's still a lot of problems to solve. No. Not getting I'm just going to skip this for time. So what have we done so far? So in the 2 years since we've been here, we've collected over 580,000 kilograms of waste, and I'm going to talk today a little bit about how we do that. Now, what's kind of unique about our project is we're zero waste to landfill. So we didn't just collect the waste, we process all of it. So we're not picking and choosing the easy stuff, we're not taking the high value items, we're processing all the waste we collect, and I'm going to show you what some of that waste looks like later. The other thing we're trying to do is not just about our collection, but how are we impacting the communities that we're working in? So we hire everybody from the communities and get them very heavily involved in the project. We believe the only way to change people's behavior is to work with them and give them a positive way to deal with the waste that's being generated in their communities. The other thing is, it typically is the poorer communities that are most impacted by the environmental waste as well. So another reason we want to work with them is make them part of the solution. So this is one of our devices in Lat Pral. We have 3 of them there currently, and we'll be adding more. So each device collects between about 65 and 90,000 kilograms a year. They're very basic, and we do this on purpose because they don't break down easy. They're easy to service. They're low cost, so we can implement them very quickly and easily. and locals can operate them, repair them, and service them very easily. The devices, like I said, every single day they're filling up like this. Anybody who's in Bangkok area, we welcome you to come visit us and we can show you what we do. And there'll be an opportunity at the end to sort of connect with us for that. So how do we process the waste? So the teams go out every day. They're collecting the waste and starting with essentially looks like garbage. If you guys came to visit us, when it comes off the boats, it is garbage. The teams then dry the waste for 24 hours. They go through a process of separating recyclable versus non-recyclable. Those things at every single stage, they're weighed and tracked so that we understand what's happening, how waste is changing, what different types of waste there are. Now, the non-recyclable waste, which a lot of people ask me questions about, so that is separated between organic and plastic waste. We track it and weigh it again. We photograph what we have, so we have proof and we verify everything. That is sent to waste energy. Now, if some people find that's not a good solution, we see it as that it's much better than sending to landfills, whereas in Thailand, landfills can have up to a 30% leakage rate, which basically means you're sending it to landfill, and sometimes as much as 30% of that waste is ending up right back into the environment. And certainly it's also something that needs to be managed year after year after year. Not all waste energy is the same. The particular facility we're using, we monitor what they're doing, and their ISO certifications to make sure there's zero air pollution, zero water pollution, and the ash and aggregate that is produced from it is used in construction. Obviously, over time, our goal is to recycle a much greater portion of what we're collecting. However, the challenge always is infrastructure and the quality of plastics. So you may have heard it here this weekend, and a lot of recyclers say, we can't get enough plastic, right? But they're not really telling the full story. Is what they've done is they built factories, and they want the waste to match the factory. Now, the problem with this is waste doesn't match the factory. So most of the recyclers here are processing industrial waste, right? The vast majority of what they're doing is from other factories, it's from manufacturing processes. Municipal waste and waste from canals and areas like this is very dirty, it's highly contaminated, and it costs a lot to separate it, clean it, and process it. So they're not processing it. So this is one of the things we're also working with them to try and bridge the gap. How do we get this huge amount, like thousands and thousands of tons of dirty waste, sort it, separate it, and prepare it for them so that they actually can process it? And this is what groups like ourselves and other people are working on in Thailand, and this is something that will have a big impact for pushing those percentages for what can actually be recycled. Now, everything that does follow the classification, we then sort and separate again. So we sort by brand, which is called a brand audit. So we know, for example, how many Coke bottles there are, how many Nestle coffee packages there are, how many diapers there are. And so we're tracking those again to see what are the waste behaviors. So when we're working with groups, communities, and companies and looking at their waste streams, we can be more effective with talking to them about how to change how people use their products. Right? So we want to know exactly what's in there, and that's what we're tracking. And I'll answer, if we have time, I'll answer any more questions on that process. But we track into over about 200 different categories. And we also track things like weather, water flow, water quality, and correlate them all together to see how this is impacting the waste that we're collecting. Again, this is our project, just a little bit more highlight on them. This is what the team's achieved. And just to give you an idea of the collection, so like I said, 580,000 kilograms. So in 2 years, we managed to collect most of the collection groups in Southeast Asia. So I'm very proud of my team for this. And how we achieved it wasn't really any special technology. A lot of it was about approach and working very closely with the people, training them properly, and being very dedicated to what we're doing. Everything we do, we keep reevaluating, is this the best way, and do we change it? But essentially, that's 8 people that did that collection. So, you know, whenever you guys come, you'll see these guys and you'll see how hard they work. And this is, you know, going up against other groups that have much more money than us, a lot more boats, more technology, and yet we continue to collect at a much higher rate than them. And part of this is about formalizing waste pickers, training them. So this is a big thing for me. It's not just what we do, but how we do it. If I manage to collect a lot of waste and solve some of these problems, but I'm creating other problems, or doing what a lot of groups do. They hire migrant workers at below minimum wages, things like this. We can't really hold our head up high and say we've solved the problem. So it's also how we're doing it is very important. So the way we treat our workers, the way we train our workers, deal with their safety, their supplies, their uniforms. And again, I have a very low turnover rate, and we have a waiting list for people to work with us, which you normally don't see in trash picking. So, and also how we work with the community again. So working very closely with community, showing them what we're doing, getting them involved. So if anybody ever does a CSR event with us or a canal tour, you'll notice that all the people helping us do that event are from the community, and we're paying them as part of getting the community involved. The other thing that we're now launching, so we're now Verra certified, which means we are able to offer plastic credits. So part of how we'll be moving forward and how we engage with brands is to provide plastic credits for their collection. So that means we've been audited by a third party that says what we make our claims are, these are in fact true. Now, for those of you that don't know what plastic credits are, a lot of organizations are making various claims around net zero and different things like this for 2030, 2050. Now, a lot of times those are very difficult for the companies to achieve. There's certain processes within their company that might be very difficult to change. They might not be able to get rid of the plastic. There might be other factors involved. So in those cases, they will buy plastic credits from an organization like us to be able to meet their goals. Now, some people consider this a shortcut, but it's not really, because you think of it as that it helps them achieve their goals, and it also helps fund organizations like us that are bridging the gap for them. The other thing that'll happen over time is the reality is they're a business and they're there for profit. So after buying credits for a few years, there's going to be a breaking point where they're going to look at it and say that it's cheaper for them to fix the problems within their production than it is to pay for the plastic credits. So this may not happen right away, but this may happen over time, and also coincide with things like different laws, EPR, and changes within government laws around packaging and recycling. So, but we're very proud of this, and it's a very long process to go through, but it sort of validates what we're doing, and you'll see more of this with other collection groups, not only in Thailand, but around the world. And I think it's a good way to start standardizing what's being done, and for groups to be able to prove that what their claims are actually true. And another thing we do with the waste to try and create demand is we're starting to make products, so both with ourselves and also joining with other organizations. So I'm constantly reaching out to startup groups and manufacturers, artisans, trying to find ways for them to process the particular materials we have. So this is an area I actually get quite excited about it, we get all kinds of different waste streams, trying to join together with other companies and find unique and innovative ways to process that. So some of the first things are quite simple. We made a bracelet. Every time you buy one of these bracelets, it pays for us to take out 20 pounds of waste. And in an industry where most people are selling a bracelet and they do 1 pound of waste, we thought this was a really great step forward to also show there's a lot of room for efficiency and improvement with ocean cleanup organizations. So, and if any of you guys in the audience or watching this later have a product or something you'd like to integrate with different types of waste streams and have recycled material in your product, please contact us, because this is what we'd love to work on with you. So now to get to the part is, what actually are we collecting? Because what you guys think we're collecting and often what we are very different. So obviously since COVID, we collect a lot of masks. So thousands and thousands and thousands of masks. So unfortunately, most of these do not get disposed of properly. There is no recycling facility in Thailand that will accept them. So where do most of them end up? In the environment. So that mask that you've worn for a few hours today will be around in about 400 years when your great-great-great-grandchildren are alive. Tetra Packs. So another thing that is often perceived as recyclable. Less than 2% of Tetra Packs get recycled in Thailand. We collect thousands of these every day because obviously the school programs have these boxes. This is also a linear product. So again, the perception is that this is this recyclable product. They can only be recycled once. They're shredded, turned into a panel, and that's it. Nothing else can ever happen with that particular product, which is why I always encourage people, products made of aluminum or glass, things that are able to be recycled much more indefinitely are certainly better packaging for those types of products. Obviously, it has some wonders when it comes to preserving food and things like that. So it's a bigger conversation than we can have here, but certainly when people are making purchases around products, think about that packaging and when you're buying it and what all their alternatives are, because this is where they end up. We also collect TV sets, toys, electronics, like I said, car parts, tires, shoes, clothing, luggage. We have a huge collection of TVs. Unfortunately, they don't work anymore, but strange. I never expected to be collecting TVs when we started the project. As I said, helmets and of course straws. Straws by weight is very small, but we do collect thousands and thousands of them. They were very symbolic for getting the movement going. They actually represent quite a small amount of the plastic that's in the environment. Mattresses. Again, because there's no proper way to dispose of these, unfortunately a lot of people dump them. And they seem to think that the rivers and canals is a great place to dump them, which makes it, and they clog up the canals, and what happens, they clog up underneath the pillars and things under the houses, then mud builds up against them, and then the bottom of the canal starts to fill in, and this contributes to flooding in Bangkok because we're blocking up the canals. This is our site on a typical day, so this is what we collect. It might be a little hard to see in the picture, but this is all waste. We'll process that, and tomorrow it'll be full again. So you can sort of get an idea of the size of the problem. So as we expand, there's no shortage of waste, unfortunately. And again, this is what we collect. Here's a little mountain that the team built of just different types. So you can see all the different things are sorting. And again, every single day, as soon as we're finished processing it, we start all over again. And this is what it starts to end up in the end. So once we've taken that waste and sorted it all, we bale it into all the different types. In this case, it's PET bottles, and I think there's some HDP in the corner, but whether it's glass, plastic, rubber, all the different types of materials, we segregate it into specific categories and things. It's baled up or bagged up to then be sent off to an appropriate recycler. So obviously, collection will not solve the problem, so we're doing other things as well. So one of the things we see a lot of is people setting up waste banks. But when I go and look at the waste banks and we try and audit them, what we find is somebody with a lot of passion started them up, and they're running, great, and then over time they do this, and they collect less and less, right? So this was something we looked at, so we wanted to say, we've been setting up waste banks for 20 years. How could we help them? And so what we're doing now is a waste bank mentorship program. So we'll go into schools, go into communities, help them set up a waste bank, give them the best practices so they don't waste their time trying to figure out what to do. We can take that passion that those people have, give them a roadmap, and help them be successful. The other thing we're going to do is then coach them over a 1-year period to make sure that they're successful. So the program goes like this. So maybe when they start, they're doing 1 or 2 different types of materials. My goal is over time that they continue to add different types of materials, and for schools, for example, is to work their way to a zero waste school. So the more schools we can set up like this, the better. And again, we've partnered with people like WWF and Suez, which is now Viola, to share all that knowledge, not just from us, but from other experts in the industry, to try and give them those best practices, right? Like I said, I want them to channel all their limited energy into making their program better, not trying to figure out how to do things. So we also work with brands. So a lot of brands come to us. How do we, be more recyclable? How do we be more sustainable? And hats off, Pampuri was one of the first in Thailand to join up with us. And they did a program doing recycling in store and then doing an offset. So every time you're buying their product, they were giving a portion to the foundation. Now this is quite common in other countries, and we're trying to bring this sort of practice here. And this is sort of a early stage of EPR. This is voluntary EPR, where a company is saying, we want to put our commitment around sustainability. We want to make it a reality. We don't necessarily have the tools ourselves, so we're going to work with a partner to do that. And for anybody that's in companies that thinks about this, they often see this as a cost. Now, what I want you to understand is that when the programs are run well, they actually drive consumer behavior. So in this case, they had a big increase in their e-commerce sales as a result of doing this program. So people responded, they bought the products, they enjoyed the products, because the truth is plastics aren't going to go anywhere. The idea that we're going to stop using plastics is ridiculous, or at least in the near future. People still want to buy and they still need things. The question is, can we manage that better and make sure that there's the right processes for it? Working with the government. So yes, the government is in the canals working and they're trying, but the truth is they're kind of overwhelmed. So this is another area where groups like ourselves are trying to work with the government, try and come up with better solutions, because it's a problem that's bigger than any of us. It's not one group that's going to solve this. It's going to be everybody working together. So we're obviously trying to work very closely with them, show them what we're doing, and try and find ways to work together. Anybody that's interested, you can come to me afterwards and we can talk about the different SDG goals. I just kind of put them up there so we can kind of talk about it. But it's like, as I said, it's about more than just collection. It's about all the processing and how we treat people, how we impact the environment, how we encourage sustainability. So that's it. I messed up my QR code a little bit, so I apologize for that. If you are interested, we are down in the lower ground floor in booth A31. Please come by and talk to me or go to our Facebook or any of our social media channels. I'd love to talk to you guys. I finished a bit early. I talked a bit fast. So if anybody does have any questions or wants to ask some more detail, I'm certainly open to that as well. Everybody's always shy to ask the first question.
Oh, thanks for sharing. I'm curious for the waste management mentorship. Is it free or is it like a paid program?
For schools, it basically goes through a qualifying process. So we go and evaluate the school or the community. But in most cases, yes, it is free. We go out and get sponsorship from different corporate partners or grants. We don't expect the schools to pay for it. The only sort of exception is like public school or private schools. They usually have their own funding to do it. But public schools, no, they don't pay for it. So we go and meet with the schools, we interview them, and then we get somebody to pay for that program. So, because there is cost involved, we basically go in, we set them up with everything they need, laptops, scales, bins, we bring them to our site, we train them for 3 days, teach them everything they need to know, and then help them be successful, because that's the goal, right? We're not going to be everywhere, but if I can get 20, 30 schools kind of go doing that, the impact starts to ripple. So yes, if you know of schools who'd be interested in the program, we'll be doing it in Bangkok, and we're also going to be launching schools in Hat Yai and Songkhla, and looking at other areas, and for example, like Ayutthaya and Samut Sakhon. Anybody else? We got. Can I get some water?
I was curious about, you mentioned after baling, the material gets sent to recycling centers, like the proper ones. So I was wondering.
Sorry?
The material that gets collected,
yeah.
Then what actually happens to it? Like, where are the recycling centers? How much of it actually gets recycled?
So it depends on the type of material, right? Thailand does have limited processors for a lot of different material. And so some things that we can recycle in other countries, we can't currently recycle here. You're not really allowed to ship it in many cases. So for example, I'm working on one material right now. We're trying to see if we can ship it to a factory in Korea. Now some people say, well, why are you shipping all there? Well, it's the choice, right? I can landfill it, I can burn it, or I can ship it to Korea and turn it into something. If I could do something in Thailand with it, I would. Typically, we're always trying to find processors that are close. And one of the things that we're actually doing now is we're going to be expanding our project, and we're going to try and process more ourselves. But this is obviously difficult because you need different machinery. You cannot buy one machinery that recycles everything. So we're looking at what are the materials can we wash and shred certain particular materials to increase the percentage, right? So if I could increase an additional 10 or 20% of that material that is now viable. But yeah, so typically we look for all different vendors around Thailand, large and small, that will be able to process it. But it's a little bit more limited than you think. Like I said, in North America and Europe, we recycle, pens, razors, toys, baby parts. There's just so many different items, right? But that's because over the time, we've built the infrastructure out. We've worked with different partners, helped them expand their infrastructure. So Terracycle does that sometimes. So they might work with a partner and say, we want to we want to recycle cigarette butts. So we'll go to a factory, help them set that up, teach them how they can do that, and then work with them to build the infrastructure, and then we channel the waste to them and manage that process. So basically I'm trying to start that same process here in Thailand. So we already have it going in Japan, South Korea, parts of China and Australia in this region, but Thailand is a newer market for us. So, any other brave souls? No? Okay, if there's nobody, that's fine. You're welcome to come by to our booth later and have a question with me. And I thank you guys all for coming here. I hope you guys will come out and visit what we do and see our site. We will be launching other projects, 4 other projects on Chao Phraya over the next couple months. And these are actually projects for other cleanup organizations where we're operating their facilities for them. We've basically proven to people that we can do it at a better cost and more efficiently, so they're seeing us as a good partner. This is also something that's important to me, is we don't need more cleanup groups. What we need is more cleanup groups working together. You go to an area, there's 10 groups working on the same problem. This is ridiculous. What we need is all those 10 groups combining their resources, setting up 1 or 2 facilities, using all their different expertise to really solve the problem, right? And that's one of the things that I'm also trying to push forward. So we're really happy that we'll be announcing some of those in the near future. And I think that's a step forward for waste management as well, is getting more groups working together. So if there's nothing else, then, oh, there's somebody there. Yes. Oh, our booth is LG A31, so it's sort of 1 floor down, down in the corner in the marketplace. So, and you guys we'll be there till about 8-9 o'clock tonight, and then we're there all day. Me and my team are down there tomorrow as well. But also you can reach out on social media and join us there. There's lots of videos on YouTube about us and so forth as well. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you very much, everybody, and I hope to see you all soon.